everyone, my name is Amy Ayala. I'm here and have the honor and privilege to be on a Hispanic Roundtable for Hispanic Heritage Month. And this is brought to you by 10 by 10. And we have the honor of just meeting some amazing people. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, just who you are, how long you've been in ministry, where you serve, and just talk us through who you are a little bit. Start with you.
For sure. Noemi Chavez. I'm lead pastor here at Revive Church, but I'm also co-founded a nonprofit called Brave Global, and we work with girls that are most at risk for human trafficking, which are girls who are on probation and in foster care. And for fun, I get to serve on a couple of boards that are significantly impacting the church, whether in our community, in the Spanish community, or in the English with Exponential. I get to be the chair of the board for Exponential Español, which I really love, and I'm proud just to see God opening new doors of opportunities to see healthy churches in the Latino community be planted and thriving. So, yeah, it's just a joy to be with you and get to hang out with some friends.
Amazing.
So following that up, my name is Fredy Romero. I'm on a pastoral team here at Revive Church, and I'm also a podcaster. And I help people develop their stories and so they can tell their stories better. My parents are immigrants. I'm from Central America, and they were pastors. So I am in the PK club, as some of you guys may know.
Yeah. My name is Amy Ayala. I am first gen. I just learned what first gen kind of means. Not because I'm about first gen. First gen, my parents are Salvadorian. I'm a digital missionary that gets the opportunity to serve churches everywhere. And my specific church where I get to serve on the teaching team. So been in ministry for about 10 years. I got 10 years last month. So I was pretty excited about that.
Nice.
Started when I was 19 and I'm 29 now. I shouldn't say my age, but 10 years in ministry. Yeah.
Nice.
My name is Bobby Lopez. I'm the CEO of Passion SoCal. We work in OC in LA. Basically, we work with at-risk youth, and we help them become Christian leaders in their community. I got nothing else, guys.
That's everything, though.
That's all I want to do.
That's everything.
That is everything. In this conversation, September being Latino Hispanic Heritage Month, we just want to celebrate and share some stories, some experiences that may be helpful and inspirational to some people, and also enlighten people who aren't part of our culture.
Yeah.
Who do not understand. The interesting thing about being Latino is that everybody knows what it is, but they can't describe it. You just know when you see it, you know when you hear it, you know when you taste it. So in that regard, let's just talk about that. Let's celebrate a little bit of that. So let's just go around and just talk about what makes you Latino.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a home, I'm first generation born here in the U.S., so I grew up in a home where my parents, to this day, been here over 50 years, they still don't speak English. That is offensive to some people, but they haven't needed to speak English because they are in Latino community. Grocery stores are all Spanish speaking. So I love it. I grew up spending most of my summers in Mexico. And I've loved growing up in a culture that is rich in the culture of family, of food, of music. And it's defined who I am as a woman. I'm a Latina. I didn't even know I had a Latina accent until I started pastoring in Long Beach. People in Long Beach were like, so where are you from? When I came to pastor here about 17 years ago, and I was like, I'm from literally 20 minutes up the road. I'm from Southgate. I grew up in Southgate, born and raised there my whole life. And so I realized I have a Latina accent. I'm just grateful. I don't want to sound like, I'm just not going to name any Hollywood stars, but I want to sound like myself. I'm a LA girl, born and raised. And I grew up in the Latino church my whole life until I started pastoring an English community within the Latino church. We were trying to reach second, third generation Latinos who felt a disconnect because of the language in Spanish. We're like, how can we be Latino leaders who are preaching the gospel, teaching the gospel, and reaching next-gen Latinos with this message? And so it was out of that my husband and I planted a church about 18 years ago. So here I am.
Yeah. And Bobby, for you, I know that your Latino experience, right? Like, for example, what would make Bobby Lopez Latino?
Oh, man.
Aside from the Z in your name, your last name.
I grew up in LA. Everybody in LA is Latino. LA is a Latino area. No, my parents were from Mexico. My mom was from Mexico. My dad was from East LA, my real father. They were gang members and drug dealers. They became Christian later on in life when I was in my teens. And so I grew up around the Chicano culture mostly. And so, it's funny, you don't know your culture. You just think everybody thinks like you do. I didn't find out how Latino I was until I moved into working in a Korean church. So I was working in a Korean American church, and I thought, well, doesn't everybody do this? And they said no. And then I started to find more that I have a different way of thinking, different values, and it was awesome. It was amazing.
Yeah. And for you, Amy, your parents are Salvadorian.
Yes.
And what community did you grow up in? Like, how did you realize okay, being a Latina is different from others?
I would say about 5 years ago when I joined my now home church. It's more American, and I grew up from literally 0 to 21 years old in a Pentecostal church where everybody's Latino, almost everybody, has the immigrant story. And even where I grew up in high school and all of that, everybody's Hispanic. And so it wasn't until I made the transition to Orange County, because I grew up in San Fernando Valley. Now I'm in Orange County, still live in San Fernando Valley, but I commute to church. And I'm like, oh, this is really different. And I had kind of the similar thing of, I didn't even know that I had an accent. I was practicing my next preach, and my pastor goes, you have an accent? I go, no, I don't. I talk like anybody else. And then a few other people told me that I had an accent. And then that's when I realized, oh man, I'm actually Latina. Yeah. I've just always been around my people where it's normal. And when I moved out of that environment, I saw different values, a different way of being, a different way that, Latinos are versus everyone else. So I started learning that. And then most recently when I went to Washington, D.C., and I actually got to go in the White House, and I actually cried in the White House, thinking that my parents are immigrants and I'm their daughter there in a place that would only be called an American dream. And I got to fully embrace and experience that.
That's so awesome. Robert Ch. Romero talks about for a lot of first generation Americans, Latino Americans, we have immigrant experiences as well, even though we're not immigrants ourselves. One of those being something that you guys both just shared immediately, which is having the way you talk highlighted by other people. Our parents who come and they try to speak English, that's one of the first things that they get highlighted by other people, their broken English. Yeah. Which for a lot of Latino immigrants, that's all they need to stop speaking it, because the shame. Yeah. They don't speak it well enough for other people to understand it. So when we get, told that we also have an accent, that's a shared immigrant experience, even though we don't consider our English to be broken. What are other, so I know maybe in that sense, it's whoa, that is so surprising. What is something maybe on the leadership side that people have highlighted to you that maybe you've taken for granted, but for a fact that this is culture driven? This is because you are Latino, and other people have said, hey, you have this. And that it's because you're Latino. For you, Bobby, I see you shaking your head, man. What could that be for you?
The Korean community has taught me a lot, obviously. So they're very reserved in when they speak, but we all speak at once, and then the loudest one speaks, right? But first time I walked into my wife's house, I thought they were arguing. And she said, no, they're just talking. But yeah, so I had to learn how to hold back, wait till once person spoke, breathe, and then speak, which is not what we do, right? Yeah. And there was just so many different things. I didn't know. I was passionate. I'm very emotive. And when I speak, I was very emotive. That threw everybody off. They're like, hey, you need to calm down. So there was just a lot of it where it was just cultural differences, and I understood that. And it was hard I didn't want to lose who I was, but I did have to adapt my communication to who I was speaking to. Yeah. It was a hard thing.
And I wonder, though, in other circumstances, let's say, in other spaces, you being so emotive and so expressive in your communication might be a superpower in a sense.
Yeah, but every superpower, if you think of Superman, if he doesn't have it in control, right, it ends up becoming wrecking you. So it was always that. It was a superpower. The kids loved it. The juvenile probation loved it when I worked with them, and I spoke with authenticity and I spoke with passion. But the problem is when I didn't know how to control it, it would impact a lot of people in a way where they would be thrown off, and they wouldn't pay attention to what I said, but more how it made them feel.
Yeah, for sure. What about for you, Noemi?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has really kind of separated me as a leader from other pastors and leaders that I'm in conversation with who are non-Latino is this idea of being close to home and being close to family. So I recently was in a conversation where somebody said, so do you and Josh ever imagine that you're going to move away to another state? If you're no longer pastoring at the church that you're in, will you move to another state? For retirement or whatnot? And I'm like, yeah, no, my parents are in their 80s and late 70s. I'm going to be here because part of my culture is to care for my parents. Yeah. And at this point, part of my agenda requires for me to schedule my mom's doctor or dentist appointments, to share that responsibility with my siblings. And so what seems to be something that shocks other people is really a norm for us. Like both of my sons, I would have wanted to go away for college. That was not allowed for me to do until I got married. I could move out of the house. So when my kids were coming into like their college years after high school, I was like, guys, where do you want to go? Like, and they're like, we don't want to go anywhere. Like, our grandma's here, our cousins are here, our family's here. We're going to go to school in this area. And so that sometimes would seem to me like, come on, like, be independent, go and explore. And they're like, no, I actually love it here. I love being with you all. I love our home. I love our family culture. And why would I want to get away and miss being with my cousins and my grandparents in this season of life? So it's just a different cultural dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I think in the past, I would have wanted them to have this more of an Anglo dream. And I would have been willing to release them. But I'm really grateful that that's not the case. I am grateful that they are at home and going to school in our neighborhood and going to college here, and that they get to go have breakfast at grandma's house on the weekend. And it gives me joy that grandma delivers food when I'm out speaking, so that they have some, enchiladas and chiles rellenos while I'm out of town. So it's a gift. It's family. It's different.
Yeah, I would share that. In a similar vein, I think it's made me a more empathetic leader. Because Latinos, a lot of our conversations revolve around a cup of coffee, some, pan dulce, a meal,
Amen.
And so nothing, and it's just such a great way, I think, to just connect with someone over a meal instead of making it so official. Even when we're discipling, even when we're teaching, even when we're training, it always seems that way. When I was little, and I would go to someone's house, and I'd go to my Mexican friend's house, and even if their moms or their grandmas would offer me food, if I said no, it was an offense. If I said no, ya comí, I already ate, they'd still serve me.
Yeah.
And they stand till you take your first bite. It's such a welcoming, hospitable culture to know that when you go to a Latino home, the etiquette is to offer you something to drink, offer you something to eat, regardless if you're going to eat or not. And I think that those are cultural traits that have helped me with other people who aren't Latino to be able to say, hey, we're going to bridge the gap through conversations. I think it's made me a better podcaster. It's made me a better relational person because, like Bobby said, we just talk over each other. We just love to talk, and that's what we do. What are some of the things that you think, leading in this space that I lead, because I know that we all lead in different spaces, leading in this space that I lead, oftentimes we do not want to form what we lead based on our identity. Sometimes we want to base it on principles, but there are a lot of things, especially if you're a founder, especially if you're the CEO, there's a lot of you that gets funneled into the organization's culture. What are some of those Latino things that have been funneled out of you into your organization's culture that you are proud of?
Yeah.
I'll start with you, Amy.
I've been in an interesting space because I grew up in Spanish church. When I left, I said, never again. I don't want to do this again. And now I find it to be what I'm running to and what's most unique about my upbringing. And I can look back at it and be so grateful for the people, so grateful for the communication, even the worship songs that stay played in your mind and your heart. And now when I'm in these different spaces where it's not just Latino people, but it's very diverse, it's actually what I appreciate the most, but what I also have to hone in. I've always been told, you're very fiery, you're very passionate. And I'd be like, that's something good. And what I realized is what you said, that it's how you speak it. My pastor actually tells me, if you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing. And so when I look back at how I grew up, I feel like the Lord really speaks to me that I'm supposed to hold the tension of spirit and truth. I feel like the Latino church taught me spirit, and my upbringing now, my formative years now, are teaching me how to deliver truth and knowing that they can both coexist. And so it's more embracing what I've already known and seeing it as honorable, seeing it as special, as opposed to rejecting it, because there's nothing in me that wants to reject where I came from. I want to use it the way that God designed me to have it, which is holding it and treasuring it as something special and seeing it for what it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. For you, what have been some of those things that have been channeled into, the many things that you lead?
It's interesting because Amy's experience is similar. I think that when we started pastoring, I came from the Latino community, and I felt like there's things that I want to unlearn. And now, in the last maybe 10 years, there are things that I've revisited because I want to have that cohesiveness of what was taught to me. One of the things that I think I forgot was the fact that our Latino community does not live in rush. Like, we actually live more paused lives, and we actually give more time to conversation, to rest. And I had forgotten, because the drivenness of the American dream and the culture that we live in is pushing you to go, 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 go. While my parents would rest, and they had peaceful, and yes, they've accomplished much and were able to gain much, but it wasn't at the cost of family time or like peaceful conversations. I've been like, I'm going to eat on the road. And it's like, what is going on? This is not who I am. I'm meant to have a seat and eat with somebody and have a conversation. So I think that one of the gifts of my culture is that we're not striving and rushing from one thing to the next. There's this deep dependence in God that He's the one who provides the outcomes and results. Even my parents coming to this country as immigrants, they knew that the provision and the blessing would come from God. Now, what's beautiful about my parents' story is that they came here trying to find this hope that felt that would provide for them an American dream, but they actually experienced the eternal hope, which comes from Jesus. And my mom found faith here. So that translates to me like the provider of all things is God. And so I don't have to live this life where I am saturated with every moment of my life having an assignment, but actually slowing down. And whenever I go back to Mexico, I realize, like, man, they have siesta hour. Amen to that. Like, shut it down for a couple of hours in the middle of the day, take a nap, and then enjoy and be fully present in the evening with family. Like, it's a different world. And I think that in that way, our Latino culture has much to contribute to the culture of this country for the health of people's souls and their spirituality as well.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, you talk about a culture that, we promote burnout. And, you would sound as a badge of honor when someone asks you, hey, how are you doing? And you always say busy. You almost like say it with pride as opposed to like rested.
Yeah.
That almost sounds shameful. Yeah. I mean, and I think it would be very beneficial to a lot of our cultures, to a lot of our organizations and churches, that if they were to operate in that healthy rhythm of life. For you, Bobby, what are some of the things that maybe have funneled out of you, that you are like, man, this is positive, this is good, I'm proud of this?
So we work in East LA, so we're in a heavy Latino community. Sure. So there's so much. I mean,
but saying that, I know you could attest to this, that sometimes organizations go into urban spaces, and though they are in Latino spaces, they don't operate, according to like they actually ignore the culture altogether and bring sometimes, I hate to say it, like suburban, culture into the hood. And so for you, what would those traits be like that you're like, man, I'm so proud of these things that have been funneled from you?
Yeah, I would say pretty much the fight, the ability to fight when it's time to fight. Maybe sometimes it's too much, but we will fight for what we believe and we are passionate about what we believe. And so I have guys who at a very young age have dedicated their lives to ministry, and they push past some big cultural barriers and some big hard situations. We have kids who get killed, and we have kids who go to drugs and breaks your heart. But for some reason, that Latino ability to always be resilient and overcome, it just pushes through. And we've been able to do that. Now, there's an unhealthy side of that, but we also focus a lot on emotion. Because our community doesn't focus so much on mental health, we've decided, hey, we're going to go the opposite and focus heavily on mental health as we go through these hard times, so that our mental strength isn't like some superficial, I'm pushing through and dying inside, but some actual strength that comes from the inside.
That's beautiful.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. What things, Bobby? I know maybe you could share a ton of stories, but I'd love to hear one from you where that, it's almost intuitive for you to fight, right? To not run away, to not back down. When have you seen that then now, be imparted to the people you lead, and then you're like, hey, Bobby, had it not been for what you taught me or for the example you gave me, I would have quit on this, or I would have cowered away from this. Like, what can you share a story on that?
It's over and over again. It's so amazing. Like these young kids who've seen them go to college, and they actually sometimes have their parents fighting against them. You need to work full time. College isn't bringing in money, and they'll keep pushing through because it's what they believe, and because they're willing to not fight on things that normally people would give up on. Seeing that, my favorite story though is my foster daughter who became my daughter, Cielo. She's amazing. We found her in a meth house when she was 13. She was growing up in all that abuse and everything you could think of that could happen in a kind of house like that. Well, one day I said, I just feel like quitting. And she goes, Pops, if you quit today, I'll take it. And it just was this like strength from this little girl who had been when we met her, was so beaten down by life. All she was doing, she was raising at 8 years old, she was raising her nephews and nieces, going into foster homes, going out, getting abused, all this stuff. And she had been broken down and she was in an abusive relationship when we found her, to where seeing her like in these healthy relationships and say things like, I'm not going to quit no matter what. And this is who I am now. And just so excited it's just been so amazing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Love that.
I love, Bobby, you and I have had conversations about this, so maybe you'll be the last one to answer this question. I'll start with Amy and then Noemi. Oftentimes as Latinos, we honor the past leaders that are Latino that opened the doors for us, that had to like break barriers so that we could be invited to, whether it be on a conference, to speak at, different spaces, to be on different podcasts, to have different job opportunities that probably would not have been afforded to the previous generation. But because they did such a good job of doing the job well, they represented well, now we have the benefit of the doubt when people invite us. So what responsibility do you carry? Like, do you think is that something that comes to your mind? Because I wonder if there are people watching because I used to be offended sometimes when I would be the only Latino invited to like a panel, and I'd be like, okay, so I'm the token Latino, I'm the token brown guy. I would want to get offended until someone told me, hey man, like you need to flip that on the other side. It's an opportunity, not just for you, but for everyone coming after you. So like, I think about that now. I think about the way I'm going to present myself when I go somewhere. I think about the way, there's some stereotypes that I want to break, there's some negative stereotypes like showing up late, that I want to break, because of my Latino-ness. There's some things that I want to make sure that I do come with it, I want to come correct because I'm thinking about those things. Do you think about those things? Do you pray about those things? Yeah. And can you give me an example of maybe how you've presented yourself and it's opened doors for other people? Amy, I'll start with you.
I used to work for a nonprofit organization when I was 16 years old. If you guys ever heard of Johnny and Friends, I got to work with them for about 7 years. And my mentor at the time, she told me to remember that the biggest thing that you can be is indispensable. And I carried that with me. And I was like, I asked her, what does that mean? She goes, it means that there's no one else like you and you will not be replaceable.
That's good.
And I started realizing as I was like growing up that means being one of a kind and you're standing on your own in that ground. And when I started going in these different spaces, I was like, God, make me indispensable so I can dispense your glory and dispense your love onto other people. And so now like I look at my niece who's 9 years old and I think about what doors can I open for her that I had to fight for them to be open? How can I put myself in spaces or allow God to put me in spaces where someone else that looks like me, talks like me, has my upbringing can be like, if she did it, well, I can be there too. Like I'm hearing you, Pastor Noemi, and I'm like, oh, she like gives my story of like, I still live with my parents. Like I'm not leaving supposedly till I'm married, right? Like, and I'm like, oh, like the thing that I thought not a lot of people get, like it's there. And now even getting to talk about it, it's even making me like grateful. Because I say these in other spaces and they're like, I don't get that. Why do you live with your parents? Why are you still there? Why do you commute 2 hours to church when you could just move here? And I'm like, well, because I love my parents. I want to be with my parents. And if I even have the space to open up about that, I want to do that. Even as you were talking, I was like, well, what's something that I appreciate about my parents or my upbringing is the fact that they fight for unity. That Latino people will not let anything break them. And in that same way, in the spaces that I'm in, like whether that be online, in churches, I want to fight for unity. I want to be resilient. I want to show other people that, yeah, you might live with your parents, but that's great. Like live your life, do what you need to do. But also living in that being indispensable. And showing that to other people, I think that speaks volumes in how they can also overcome no matter where they come from or what their upbringing is.
That's so cool. For you, Noemi, what are some of the things that you think about when you get opportunities, like, for example, to be on boards? You get invited, and because I know you get invited to boards. Bobby, too, like, and you guys say no more than you say yes. Yeah. But to the things that you say yes to, do you think about, like, hey, as a Latino, I have a responsibility here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think at some points I've struggled with thinking, am I the tokenized person in this space? But I'm like, no, because my steps are ordered by God. So they're about to get me. They're going to get the Latina pastor from an urban church. They're going to get all of me. And then if they don't like me, then they could ask me to leave. And I got a lot of work to do. So it's quite all right. And no hard feelings. Like, stay in your lane. I'm going to do what I'm called to do. So it's showing up fully present because I've got things that are in my history and my culture that can enrich that space. And I think it's beautiful. But then also, like, whenever there's an opportunity and they're like, hey, do you know of anybody? I got a list of people that I will recommend to be in spaces. And I do that all the time. To me, it's one of the greatest joys to be a bridge builder and to open doors for the young people in my community who are saying yes to Jesus in the hard spaces, and their stories need to be heard, and their obedience needs to be observed, and their bowed will needs to be an example to others. So many times, and it's not because I feel like, oh, I'm the one who opened the door for somebody. I'm just like, oh, girl, I got you. You don't even know. They're going to call you, and you're going to get to be in this space, and you're going to kill it. And I champion the young women in my world and the men as well. And Fredy knows that. Like, I love to see these incredible young leaders get the opportunity to be in spaces because I'm so in awe of their heart and their leadership that I feel like the world is missing out. So anytime I have that opportunity, that is one of my greatest joys, to bring people of color into spaces where there is a hunger and our Anglo community is looking for it. So I don't want to be jaded in my heart because I don't want to be like anybody else. I want to be the Latina who's warm, who loves Jesus and loves people. So I'm going to bring in, the Latino tribe or even our community of friends who are African American or Asian. Like, I'm constantly looking for ways to see those because their stories and their faith is going to shape the history of faith in our country.
Yeah.
The story of people being enamored by the gospel to follow Jesus when it's hard. And I think that we have modeled that in ways that needs to be known.
That's so cool.
Can I just tell her, thank you for being that? Because even hearing that you take pride in opening the door for other people, like I'm here like, God, I want to grow up and be like her. Because I was the girl that was told no. You can't go through that door. You can't do that. And it made you feel like you're like a lone wolf of like, I gotta figure it out then. I gotta fend for myself. And I've made one of my prayers that when those opportunities come, I'm able to share a name. And to hear somebody saying like, I've been in those spaces and I'm gonna open the door, like that makes me excited that the Latino church is moving forward of just like not gatekeeping, but opening the door.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Bobby, for you, man, like, what responsibility? I mean, do you think about that? And two, what responsibility do you carry then? Like self-imposed responsibility, do you feel like you carry being a Latino invited to spaces where maybe there aren't a lot of Latinos?
Yeah, I don't know if I kind of have the same. It's been about being unique. A long time ago, I was in a meeting. There was all these guys with doctorate degrees who came from very affluent areas. And I walked outside and I told one of my mentors, I don't want to be here. And he said, they're not calling you because you're like everybody. They're calling you because you're not like everybody. They need your perspective, your unique perspective. Yeah. And so I've always stood on that. I'm not here to be like anybody else. I'm here to be uniquely myself and provide that perspective, even within the Latino community. I come from the neighborhood. My parents were gang members, all that stuff. I'm very proud of that. We come from that, that we were able to fight through that. And I think that that's what the biggest thing is I don't feel like I have like this heavy responsibility, but I do feel like there's a responsibility in the Latino community as becoming the largest population, where we're bigger than where representation and leadership is. And it's time for us to take that spot. And it's not going to be given very easily. So we have to be able to be in uncomfortable spaces. So I feel like, at certain times I'm in a really great time where it's just naturally shifting to the Latino communities being heard more, because in the past we haven't been heard. Yeah. We've just been a silent organization. I also think as a leader, most of people see us as workers. I can't stand when people talk about us and they say, Latinos are so great. They work on this, they work on my house, they do this. And I said, we do more than work, we can lead. And breaking that barrier for not just myself, but other Latino kids watching, it's like an honor to be there.
Yeah. No, what a responsibility to lead well. One of the things I think also becomes a superpower, being Latino, is that Latino-ness we are already a diverse culture. We're not monolithic. In fact, even in our language, we're not. Colombians will speak Spanish different than Mexicans will. Salvadorians and Puerto Ricans will speak it completely different. There's one word could mean something here, something could mean, we don't look the same. Even our music is completely diverse. So when I hear organizations, especially churches, say, hey, we want to become multicultural, multilingual. We want to become very diverse. I think that for Latino leaders, that's a great opportunity for churches to promote and elevate Latino leaders, because Latinos already naturally just do that. In fact, Latinos already marry cross-culturally. We don't see it that way. Yeah. But we already marry.
Yeah, I'm a Mexican. I married a Salvadorian.
And aren't you guys supposed to be rivals?
Right, 100%. I mean,
how do you agree on words like straw? Like you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The popote or what do they call it?
Pajilla. So, and people who aren't Latino won't understand that. But there's already multiculturalism in Latinos. So, can you speak to that? Can you speak to some of the lessons that maybe our Black brothers and sisters, our white brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, people who are not Latino, but they know, like, hey, the culture is leaning to becoming majority Latino population, and they're wanting to get ready for it. What are some of the things that probably to us come naturally that are lessons that they could learn so that they don't have to learn the hard way?
Oh, man. I think I'm just going to go there. Like, I think that our community of Christian leaders need to understand that when you've got Latinos who are educated, who are exposed to all of the things that would push against them having high-level education, when you align yourself to politics that directly affect the people that they are working with as leaders in organizations, social workers, educators, medical schools, you are closing the door for incredible Latinos to come to faith with your narrative. So what I would say to people who are leading in the church, if you want to reach our people, you need to align yourself more to Scripture, to the Word of God, to the truth, elevate your message to the gospel. We are one nation under God in the world. Yeah. The nation of God's people are all over the world. And so I think that allegiance, that loud allegiance, could close the doors to you reaching educated Latinos who would come to know Jesus and be the Esthers and be the Josephs in the community that are being shepherded by Christian leaders who are teaching them to live a life of integrity. So I would say, be cautious with your alignment. Let it be to Scripture so that you could reach the educated Latinos that are impacting change in their communities. And I tell this to my pastoral friends all the time. Sis, you are not Esther. Ro, you're not Joseph. We are Mordecai's. We are shepherding people so that their lives of integrity could impact the world in which they're leading. And whatever that might be, in whatever space that they're leading in, shepherd them so that their homes are healthy, their heart is healthy, their soul is healthy, so that they do the work that they're called to do. Otherwise, then, I mean, it's just, to me, there's this clear commissioning for God's people and as leaders into the future. And as polarized and as crazy as our world is, if we're not being intentional about elevating the gospel, then we're missing the mark in reaching the people that is most growing in this nation.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And I love, like, for example, Bobby talking about, lack of representation for such a large population, our responsibility in championing them to be able to make change, and it's so interesting too, like there are certain parties, right, that they may seem so anti-Latino because of some of the rhetoric. Unknowingly, we Latinos probably relate more to certain political parties based on different cultures and morals and the values and principles. And but what they're doing is they're creating a wedge between, and so we become unreachable with the gospel. We become like, nobody wants to hear that. If I think that you despise, you don't even want me in this country.
Exactly.
Why would you want me a part of your religion?
I don't think there's a party that represents the Latinos very well. I don't think there's 100%. A political party. I think that we're whole life from birth to earth, and I think that a lot of times people, like the biggest population, they're trying to appease us. Every 4 years they come to us and to want to listen to us, but there's no real party that represents our value systems, conservative value systems, or whatever you want to call it. I definitely don't think there's.
And it's so interesting. Yes, that carrot being dangled every 4 years. I think that Latinos are now waking up to the fact that, okay, we don't want to be used as pawns because you need our vote to get over the hump, and win this. And so I do think that there is an opportunity for other organizations to know, hey, their Latino voice is not just not just something to be used to your advantage. Like, we want to be part of the conversation. We want to be part of the movement. We want to be part of those leadership positions. Amy, I'm not, I want to know from you, like, Latinos, we're already multicultural, just because it's just innately in us. Like, we need to learn how to become diverse. We just naturally are. And so what are some of the things that maybe our white brothers and sisters, black brothers and sisters can, other people from other cultures can learn regarding, because everybody wants to be multi
ethnic
now,
because that's how the world is going.
I think one of the greatest strengths that Latinos have is that we're very vulnerable and we're oversharers. And that really helps when you're in ministry. I know that when I was going into the high schools, I got challenged. So I used to be a high school campus missionary, and I was very used to, like, my neighborhood. I would do it in the San Fernando Valley at my high school. I was like, I can speak their language. And then they told me, you should do like 2 weeks where you go preach at the LA high schools. And I was like, all right. And so I was like, Centennial, Manual Arts, and all this. I'm like, it's a different language. But I led that with vulnerability, with opening the door to my life, to my parents' life. And that's appreciated.
So good.
And I feel that when you lead with vulnerability, when you lead with, like, here's my life, here's the book, you can read it, people respect that. And so I feel that if we were to approach, with more vulnerability, with more openness, that will open the door for the gospel to reach hearts. There's a quote that I love that says that your life might be the only Bible that an unbeliever ever reads. And it's what is there in my life that I'm showing to other people? And that also includes my culture. That also includes my upbringing. That also includes, like, even my parents' story. So when I lead with that, it changes the story and it changes conversations.
What about you, Bobby?
I think that they need to understand that sometimes they're in a culture too. And just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. I think a lot of times what we consider Christian, or the most Christian, or a good Christian, is actually just white or Anglo, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of times we're saying we have to look at a Latino leader and we say they have to be more like us in order to lead. And the truth is, we'll lead our own way. It's a unique way of leading. It's with vulnerability. It doesn't make us less of a leader, just a different kind of leader. And I think when we talk about diversity, we talk superficially. I have a Spanish ministry. Well, we're bigger than just our language. And, having a culture is more than that. It's how we operate, how we talk to each other, how we communicate, how we do community. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, so they get thrown off by it. And I think they get thrown off by Latino leaders because we are different, and they don't understand that's how you reach Latinos.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What could an organization be missing out by overlooking, a Latina leader?
Oh my gosh, the work ethic is amazing. So we can rest. My family's from Rancho, so we can party, but we can also work really hard. I mean, they're so passionate about their work, what they do and how we do it. And it could become toxic, but no, they could miss out on that. Someone who's dedicated to their church. When we're dedicated to our church, we're dedicated to our church. My grandma rides her church like it's a gang. Like, honestly, I grew up in a gang culture too. She's like, what I'm saying? Don't talk about that. Like, she'll take me outside and she got hands, And so we're passionate about, we're missing out on so much, and the ability to reach more different people and to be able to grow as a church. Like Tommy Nixon always says, America's becoming more brown. And as it becomes more brown and becomes the majority, that means that we're becoming less Caucasian. So if you want to reach the majority, you're going to have to learn how to reach. But it's more than just getting Latino and putting him there on your. I cannot stand this. You'll look at the pages of some of these multicultural churches, and they'll have the all white leaders, and then the one Hispanic guy who does janitor, and they're saying, "Look, we're multicultural." No, it's about letting us really have a voice, not just putting us up there and not listening to us, but actually allowing us in spaces of power. People always tell me how to reach the Latino community. I said, if you're not listening to us at a higher level where we have power, if your we'll look like your church will look like your executive team, and if your executive team is all one, you're not going to get, by the adversity. So there's just so much they're missing out on. They're missing out on growth, the future of America. I mean, that's how it is. And so, I tend to struggle with a lot of people who think they know us or represent us because they have one person that looks like us, but that's superficial. Go deep. Let us speak into power.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Noemi, you lead with your team. We lead a church that is multi-generational when we come to Latinos. You know, we have a bilingual service right now where you have immigrant Spanish only speaking, adults, right? They're grandparents. You have first generation Americans who grew up here. They're now in their 30s, 40s. And then you have their kids who are now in junior high, high school, or they're in our kids ministry. Yeah. So you have like 3 generations minimum in some of our services. What comes to mind when you see that, when you like turn around and you look at the congregation and you notice Latinos, but 3 generations of Latinos where like before that would not have existed. You either have a young church, an adult church, or a really, really old church.
I think that there's a responsibility to shepherd all of them. So sometimes as younger leaders, I'm not a young leader anymore. I'm 45 years old. I started pastoring when I was 29. When I was 29, I remember intentionally having to consider not the younger people, because naturally I was young-hearted, so I wanted to lead with young strategy. But I remember having to pause and think about the older people because they mattered to God and how I would shepherd them to what I would call is to new green pastures and to other springs of water that would look slightly different for the sake of the next generation. But how do I shepherd their hearts? So as a leader, I felt this warmth and love towards the older generation, also because my parents are in that generation. So I think God did that intentionally to me as a pastor. How will you shepherd your mom and dad? How will you, they need a pastor still. They're not pastoring. They still need a pastor. So how do I shepherd people who are older? Now, how do I shepherd people who are in my age group, who are parenting young adults? And now I have to think about my kids and my friends' little kids. How am I going to shepherd the babies? How am I going to lean into that, into the voice of them as 3rd and 4th and even 5th generation Latinos who still will value their heritage, the story of coming to this country. They will value our food, our music, and our customs. But how do we still help them understand the power of the gospel and how we're going to reach the next generation? So it takes leaning in for every leader. And so I think that I love the size of our church because it helps me to still continuously lean into voices without having to send somebody else to lean into voices. I like to still be the one who leans into voices and shepherds families and see stories evolve and see people's Mexican kids marry white people, marry black people, marry Korean people. Like, it's beautiful to see this beautiful story being told of the gospel weaving cultures together.
Yeah, that's so dope. I want to end with just some honor. We're here because a lot of people paved the way so that we could have voices, so that we could have opportunities. So here's maybe, you can answer this question one of 2 ways, because, I want to land this plane. I want to celebrate our history. I want to celebrate our heritage. There's going to be many more opportunities with Amy as she's bringing on other leaders as well to share their stories. Can you shout out like either a mentor, someone that, that just opened doors for you, or broke down barriers that, because of them, like you are afforded the spot that you're in? And if you don't, could you at least share with the young people? Could you share with young people like, hey, how can we honor what, I don't want to miss out on the wisdom that we have from our grandparents, these sages, these OGs that are in the community that have survived some things that we don't even have to worry about anymore. How can we honor them best? So you can answer that, one of 2 ways. Whoever wants to kick that off can go ahead and kick that off.
I can. I want to honor 2 different groups. I want to honor the church that I grew up in. And I want to say that because I think my generation, I call myself a millennial. I don't think I'm all the way a millennial. I'm not all the way Gen Z. I'm like right in the middle. I feel for my generation because we struggle with a lot of church hurt. And this church hurt has kept people away from God. And I can look at my experience, which is a whole different podcast for another day. And I can look back and tell my church, thank you. Thank you for what you dispensed into my life. Thank you for showing me the Spirit of God. Thank you for showing me holy fear. And also now, as someone that's been out of my church for about 8 years, thank you to my pastor, Bianca Juarez Olthoff, that I've gotten to see lead in spaces that I never thought imaginable. But besides her public ministry, her private life has showed me that your communion with God is will really translate into everything else. And she's opened doors for me. And I tell her all the time, you let me peek through the, like to open the curtain and see things that I never thought were possible, that I never thought that I would know. She put me in sermon meeting rooms. She taught me how to write a sermon where all I used to do is post-it notes as on my Bible and off of memory, and just give me key leadership moments that I wouldn't have learned any other way. If she wouldn't have said, here's a seat next to me, sit with me, learn from me. So
that's
thank you
awesome.
to both of them.
I love it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
For you, Bobby?
So I have a couple. Angel Ruiz, he was the vice president of Young Life at a time. I met him, and he literally opened doors for me. He taught me how to work in different cultures. He called people for me. Every time I called, he answered the phone, which was amazing because he was so busy. And I thought he made me. I thought I was his best friend. I thought I was like his mentee, the one guy, right? And then I came to his funeral, and it was filled with everybody that felt the same way.
Yeah.
Wow. And at his funeral, I decided I want to help people the way he helped me. I want everybody to have an angel in their life. That's why we built our network that we built in order to do that. Because people need someone who will open doors with them, and so they don't feel. I always say it's like walking through a forest, and you feel like you're alone. It's a lot harder to walk when you feel like you're alone versus holding someone's hand. Angel held my hand for years and walked me through. And when he passed, before he had passed, he told me, "You're going to be the one that runs it." I don't know if he told everybody that, but he told me that. But it was amazing, and that was encouraging. And also my parents, who fought out of the neighborhood, and they came from gangs and drugs and everything, but they were able to get out of that, and it still drew on them. They had trauma from that. They still went back to that neighborhood lifestyle, but they kept fighting forward. That ability to, I wouldn't be here without my mom having crashing through the doors that I walked through very easily.
Man, that's phenomenal to hear. And big shout out to Angel, because I've heard many other people share something similar. So that's really good, and we honor his legacy, and hope that we could do something similar, for other people. Who's that person for you, like that, impacted you, mentored you, opened doors for you? Maybe someone that you looked up to.
Yeah, I would say definitely my mom, because since I've known her my entire life, has been a woman of faith. And as a family, we've gone through really hard things, but her faith has been such an anchored faith. Like, she's never gone through a season in all the years of my youth and young adult life where she walks away from faith, because life is crappy and hard, and the enemy hates you, and he wants to plan everything against you to destroy you, your hopes and your dreams. Like, the solid foundation that she has in her faith in Jesus has helped me as a pastor now and as a leader to remember, what would she do every morning? Spend time with Jesus. And so that model for me was not given to me by another spiritual leader. She modeled that for me at home. So spending time with Jesus has been what has helped me to stay faithful, to believe when things are hard, to trust when it feels hopeless, and her joy. Like, I want to have joy amidst all the hell. And so she definitely modeled that for me. She's a woman of faith and great integrity. And then another person that has been a huge gift and opened doors for me is this amazing leader in our city by the name of Eric Marsh. And Eric Marsh, any meeting he's in and people start talking about, oh, we're having this event, he's always like, oh, you should call Noemi Chavez in Long Beach. She's killing it. I'm like, what am I killing? I'm not killing anything. But he has always, and so many doors that God has opened has been because Eric quietly, nobody knows who Eric Marsh is unless you're listening to this and you're like, I know exactly who Eric Marsh is. And you know how much he likes to selflessly lead and likes to be the person behind the curtain nobody knows about. But this man, complete weirdo white dude, has been like, Noemi Chavez, you need to bring her into your space. So even Exponential, Mosaics with Mark DeMoss, like the multi-ethnic experience, all of these spaces have been because Eric Marsh, Q, when I spoke at Q, he's the one who's saying, you need to have Noemi Chavez. And it was just such, like, him championing me has been a gift. He's been a wonderful friend to me.
That's beautiful. One of the things about the Latino experience, especially the immigrant Latino experience, is that it helps us to relate to the gospel, knowing that we are also foreigners here, that this isn't our permanent home, that we belong to someone else, a kingdom, our identity resides in something else. And I think that is something that my parents imparted. And has, me being Latino, I've been able to understand that. There's a different language, there's a different culture. Mm-hmm. It's not like society. It's not like where you are. And we pray for the prosperity of the city. We're here to work. We're here to honor it. We're here to take care of it. We're here even to protect it. Shout out to everyone who's, served our country here in the United States well. But we always remember that this isn't our home. Like the United States is not our home. And I think that is something, being a Latino, and that our parents have taught us, has made me relate to the gospel so much more. And so thank you guys so much for being here. Amy, I'll let you just give us what our call to actions is so you can close this up.
I think you need to answer that question too.
Well, I would just say, I would say my parents. My parents are pastors. My parents, I grew up in Christianity, I would say. And though my salvation story is completely different, the one thing I will know is that they're the ones that broke barriers for me. My dad, same thing. They've been here for over 40 years and they still don't speak English well. But my dad was the first one to buy me Sesame Street alphabet books and taught me how to read English when I was in pre-K. And go figure. My mom would take me to the movies so that I could watch movies that she didn't even understand because she wanted me to learn the language and be a part of the culture. And so, they're my heroes. They're just know, and not only because they would also remind me, hey, I worked so hard, so like, I don't work this hard so you can give me a C, I work this hard so you can come with straight A's. You have to worry about nothing. And so, I owe everything to them, so that they're my heroes for sure.
Well, thank you to all of you for being a part of this amazing conversation. And just know that I feel so honored to even hear your stories, hear what God's doing in your lives. And I'm taking like little pieces of, if I hear a sermon soon and you hear a line that you said, like, don't be surprised.
Amen. You can have it all.
I appreciate you guys. And thank you guys so much for watching as well. For any Latino leader out there, happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Anybody that's watching this, thank you for what you do. Keep pushing forward because there's so much to do in God's kingdom. God bless you.